Would you or would you not agree that Elon Musk and Tesla are absolutely killing it with incredible progress these last few days? First, Elon is in founders mode as he continues to work hard and getting more and more things in place for transforming Tesla from an auto business to a robotics AI company. Second, Andrej Karpathy, ex-Tesla director of Autopilot, was interviewed recently. He talked about how Tesla is what he calls a robotics at scale company. He explains what he means by this, and you'll then better understand what makes Tesla different. Third, Tesla AI dropped the roadmap for FSD release and the missing pieces for robotaxi. So we've got the bulls here with us today. You got Jeff Lutz, also known as Mr. Incredible, Xander Sky, the Froyo Tycoon and Options Bull. We got Cern Basher, the Bot Bull, and Larry Goldberg, our Golden Bull. Welcome, everybody.
I want to be a Golden Bull.
All right, so let's get started with our agenda today. Elon in founders mode is going to be the first thing we talk about. We'll also discuss, Elon being asked to help with government efficiency, his contribution to the world. And of course, Time Magazine showed he's not even in the top 100 for AI influence. Tesla FSD, Tesla AI dropped the FSD roadmap. And then the big topic is Tesla becoming a robotics at scale company? So as a founders mode, this is something that Elon just posted a few days ago. He said, just leaving Tesla engineering offices in Palo Alto, mostly good, some bad. The future is going to be wild. There'll be so many robots. Tesla and Elon, he just works really hard. He works late at night. He flies around multiple offices. And I bet you one of his favorite places is the engineering offices. Jeff, why don't you kick us off? What do you think about, is Elon in founders mode, and does that help, and is that making Tesla succeed? And are we not increasing our progress at the last several weeks and months?
He's been in founder mode for probably 30 years, and it doesn't stop. So, those are the facts. And you can go back through, the history of companies where he's founded. He's been in leadership. And then, of course, his role entering Tesla, and then, of course, starting SpaceX from the ground up. Taking 170 million of his own money, splitting in between the companies, and really betting everything he has on sustainable multi-planetary spaceflight, and of course driving sustainable transport on Earth with Tesla. So he's been in that mode for a while. He's going to continue in that mode. I've worked for founders in this mode, both at the startup level, and I've worked with them as a board member, or I've worked with founders actually at large scale companies, and I can tell the difference. You're not bad if you're not a founder. There's been great CEOs of the world in present day that aren't founders, but there is a different gear, and if you do have that talent and you are a founder, there's just there can be, you can see them entering a different gear at many times to make sure their companies are prosperous, they grow, they're at scale, and you can see a meaningful difference between the two. You also see a big difference between engineering, like if your leader is highly technical, engineering focused, hands-on, not more theoretical per se, but just actually gets into the details, versus someone that is, several steps removed and driving just, a broader team, or somebody that does a combination of both. And you can see the real difference between them. And just finally, I know there's several of us that try to analyze and try to understand how does he plan his time, and how does he schedule his time. And I would just venture to tell you that, I would say most people just would not understand it, and would look very foreign to them if they saw his calendar and saw how, he would go, he may have 5 or 10-minute meetings or 15-minute meetings where very large decisions are made, and large depths of detail are gotten into. And then he could switch, between topics, between multiple companies, even within a day. So it's kind of a very unique situation. It's difficult, I think, for many to understand from the outside looking in, but in terms of founder mode versus, I would say, non-founder mode, you can definitely see them entering a different gear. There's different things are at stake, and there's sometimes a different level of passion involved in it, and that comes out at many times. So he's definitely he's definitely in that mode. And what's the final thing I'll say is, if you're looking at his companies, that he doesn't tend to like start a company and just let it stagnate for many years. He's continuing to try to reinvent what that company is. You saw what Tesla started as in terms of its scale and its product offerings, and now you see it today. And now you see him getting into many different verticals inside of Tesla with energy and bots and AI. So that continued reinvention as well is also something that I can see coming from founder mode.
The company and the product. I don't look at the quarterly stock movement.
A very realistic bull, questioning certain decisions.
The rational bull. I enjoy listening to bears.
Looking for the red flags. You're supposed to react.
The longer term opportunity for Tesla is like no other company that I've ever seen.
I wanted to ask you guys the same question, okay? And you guys can answer it all the same, each of you, which is, do you not see Tesla, and specifically Elon, pushing the company and progressing so fast now, right? He was able to get his XAI companies to open up Colossus, the largest supercomputer in the world, in 122 days. Previously, he had shown that Cortex, the supercomputer for Tesla, is already up and running so quick. And then, of course, here he is talking about robots in this particular tweet here. The future is going to be wild. There'll be so many robots. So do you guys think that the progress he's making is going faster and faster as we move forward here? Let's start with you, Cern.
Well, the first thing I want to say is I absolutely marvel at Elon's capacity for work, and the sheer variety of things that he is involved in is just staggering to me. Running Tesla would be enough for anybody. Running SpaceX on top of that, which is an entirely different business with its own complexities and massive, massive engineering challenges. And then on top of that, you're adding in X and all the political ramifications of the things that they're involved with and dealing with, right? The situation in Brazil and so on. And then starting up an AI company, XAI. And then on top of all that, Neuralink and the Boring Company. It's just absolutely staggering to me. And when I look at it, Elon very strategically, with those companies, just those 6 enterprises, is going to disrupt so many different industries. It's unbelievable, right? When you look at Tesla, it's disrupting automobile and insurance and energy and utilities, transportation, trucking, probably disrupting manufacturing at some point, and the labor market with humanoid bots, right? And maybe even the cloud computing market. And same thing with XAI. XAI will probably disrupt advertising and education and the cloud services business. SpaceX disrupting the internet and telecom businesses. And then you get into some, exciting things down the road with them, like mining in space or drug manufacturing in space, or rapid delivery to any spot on Earth, and space tourism. So those are some business concepts that they haven't gotten involved in yet, but probably will at some point. And so for one guy to be the head of all these companies pushing the envelope as much as he does is unbelievable to me.
And let me share with you guys a different concept, explaining exactly what is founder's mode, and then ask you if Elon does it. So it's not just that he's working hard. It's that he, a founder, is able to run a company completely different than managers, and they would make decisions completely different than managers would, right? Here's Paul Graham, famously founded YC Combinator, a big startup incubator. It's very, very successful. He, I believe, is also part of the PayPal mafia that also worked with Elon in the past. So he wrote an article that he called it Founder Mode. And it was sparked by a talk that Brian Chesky, who's the Airbnb CEO and who's also a board member of Tesla, talking about how different leaders behave and how they delegate. And Graham said, people who are founders like Steve Jobs, they will do things very differently than any other company. The example he gave was that, Steve would often, or he would every once in a few years, he would gather like the top 100 people, or maybe even a top 1,000. I think it's a top 100. And then they would go to an offsite, they would do a strategy meeting, but it's not based on hierarchy. He would pick and choose who would go there. I don't know if any other company would be able to do that. So with Elon, do you guys think that he actually does things very differently? And because he's the founder of the company, he can do this. Yeah, go ahead, Larry.
Yeah, so as a long-time multi-company founder, I can absolutely endorse what Graham says about founders running companies differently. And I'd have to say that my own track record, I've probably founded a dozen companies. I stopped counting the other day when I got to 10. But I will say that my skill sets evolved over time enough to realize that actually I'm an incredibly poor manager, while perhaps a better founder. And I think there are two different skills there. So many founders don't actually run their company, but those that do definitely have a different set of priorities and foci. And I think that is really what Graham is talking about. I know that at a point in time, I found myself in charge of 3 companies. And unlike Elon, I was unable to keep focus on all 3. I allowed my focus to drift from one of them. And so I think Elon definitely does exercise what Graham calls founders mode. And a founder mode is the mode where the founder actually feels responsibility for everything that's happening and is focused on the strategy and what is happening to execute that strategy, whereas a manager may actually be more involved with various distractions and exogenous issues. So I think a founder mode is a very profound thing, but what is extraordinary about Elon is that he runs multiple companies at the same time in founder mode. And that's what's extraordinary. So I think Graham is right. And I think you're correct to say that he runs his companies in founders mode. But I think there's something else going on here, which we haven't seen. I haven't seen in any other founder ever. I may be wrong, but I don't think anybody can compare to that.
Yeah. I think the big question is, can anyone else actually take a behemoth company like Tesla, as an auto company, and then decide we're going to become a robotics AI company, and I'm going to completely change the company?
We've seen managers pivot extraordinarily well. We've seen founders pivot particularly, and I can think of several that have done an incredible job of doing that pivot. But he's doing that in multiple organizations at the same time. Anyway,
yeah,
that's what I'm amazed about.
Okay, Xander, did you want to jump in?
Yeah. First, Larry, congratulations on 10 plus startups, and that's amazing. And also recognizing, that, like you said, not such a great manager. I think that founders that are this involved, like Elon, is the reason why I fell in love with Tesla. It was the jockey. So there's no one that cares. And I'm a small business owner, so including building one from scratch, start to finish. So an entire restaurant. So I get that nobody cares like the founder. Just there's nobody. Managers, CEOs, they care about their compensation packages. Elon will work for free. He lives, dreams, sleeps. Everything is all about the vision of the company. And so I think that there's no one that that cares about progress. Like Herbert, you asked about, is progress faster? And I just don't think that it's any faster than is possible for the engineers and the people involved to do what they're set out to do. And their bar continues to increase. They will, as you know, as someone who managed people, I would set out a challenge for my team, and then once they get close to meeting it, I would just raise the bar to the next impossible task. And I think that that's what he does very, very well. And this perpetually hopeful nature of Elon, like I heard somebody say today, if this was, I think, Sawyer's space. He said, if Elon says it, I don't believe it. But if Ashok says it, then I believe it. And I think that that's a great way to look at it. Elon will always be ultra optimistic. So I actually wanted to call out one other thing, which was he says some bad. Can we discuss what that means? Do you guys have any hypothesis and what are the bad things that he brought up?
My sense on that is, if they were talking about optimists, there are certain things I think that he wants to see, and I think maybe he's frustrated about progress on some of those things. I don't know specifically what they would be, but this is robotics is a tough thing to work on and develop. So I think he's expressing some frustration, which is interesting that he would choose to do that in this message. And I'm not really sure necessarily what the intention is there, other than perhaps to kind of let the team know that, hey, I'm a little frustrated with you, as if they couldn't tell in the meeting with them. I'm sure he's pretty direct with his comments. But I'm curious about sort of why he chose to write it this way in this message, just like you are, Xander.
Yeah,
it's
to
not
make it
clear to me
public.
why he would do that.
I can tell you, when you're pushing the boundaries of things that have never been done before, if you don't have a top 5 list of things that are going wrong, you're probably not pushing far enough. And knowing what Elon is doing and how he's pushing his teams and how his teams push themselves, I guarantee you they're going to run into roadblocks with some of the things that are developing, whether it's autonomy, whether it's robotics, whether it's getting general intelligence into both of these. So again, when you're pushing the boundaries of things that have never been done before, you're always going to have that top list of things that are going wrong or could be a problem. If you don't have that list, you're probably not pushing as hard, and we know that's not the case here.
My interpretation of this is that it's about the sense of urgency. Elon is saying we need to move fast. We need to move fast for AI, for robotics, for autonomy, for everything that we're working on. And so the Tesla engineering offices is the engineering group that is doing a lot of the prototyping. And so that's where I think it is. It's more about speed of progress. And then when he says there will be so many robots, I don't think that he's referring here to there's going to be like 1 million optimists, billion optimists. No, he's talking about there's going to be many different kinds of robots, because again, we're at the prototype. We're at the the heart of the team deciding what to do in the future. That's what I think this means. So he got very excited, going, my God, we got so many different kinds of robots that we're prototyping right now.
Herbert, I agree with you there, but why say the second sentence?
Which was mostly good, some bad? Yeah. Oh, because he was asked by a person, randomly, just some random person had asked, how are you doing, Elon? I'm a little worried about you. He replied to that person.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't think he was talking about what he saw at the engineering offices. He's doing mostly good and some bad. It was my interpretation, but maybe I'm wrong.
Oh, himself personally, you mean?
Could
yeah, because that was the question that he was answering.
Okay.
So I just wanted to add a few items. Firstly, just a correction on Paul Graham. He was never in the PayPal mafia. So he was writing. No, he was writing about Elon being in the pay. But I think one of the things we must recognize that the founder's not always right. And very often the founder's wrong. There is a certain tunnel vision that founders live in. They live in a tunnel. They're looking for a goal. They're looking at a goal. And when the business starts growing and becomes more complicated, these things are these are noise. And the way you get rid of noise is you create this tunnel. Sometimes the tunnel tends to exclude some important noise. So we have to understand that with the good of founder vision comes some bad. And that is, this tunnel vision, sometimes people get left by the wayside, sometimes people get hurt. It is one of the sacrifices that the founder has to make, or the successful founder very often has to make to achieve the goal of bringing the company into, success. And Elon, unlike many founders, doesn't find it sufficient to achieve a particular goal, because when he achieves that particular goal, he sets the next goal. And that distinguishes him very dramatically from many other founders who achieve a certain success. They're happy to sell on their business and then start the next. Elon did that with his first business reluctantly. He was opposed to the sale of the business. When he came to PayPal, he was dispossessed of his position in PayPal. Therefore, the sale of PayPal was very natural to him. It was really not decided. It wasn't. Now he's in a different position. I don't think you're going to find him easily being dispossessed of any of these companies. So I think that's a very distinguishing feature of Elon's founder mode. And so I think he you have to understand there's founders mode and then there's founder mode squared, or founder mode, Elon mode.
Yeah, it's Elon mode. That's what this is.
That's the difference.
Yeah. All right. I want to show this clip by Andrej Karpathy, who worked for Elon, of course. He's the director of AI before. And, Tesla is trying to move as fast as they can at this point to become a robotics company. And this is why I'm saying that I'm seeing more and more progress recently, because a lot of things we're seeing, including the data centers being put up, the Optimus progress, even energy in the battery, all of that comes together to prove to you that Tesla is now going to become a robotics at scale company. This is Andrej Karpathy. He said, Tesla is a robotics at scale company. A lot of technology components and expertise in building cars and FSD directly transferred to developing Optimus. And he said, this is a nuance very few people understand. So let's listen into what he said.
Transfers, and I don't think people appreciate it.
Okay. That's a big claim.
I think
like a very
cars
different problem.
are basically robots when you actually look at it.
Okay.
Cars are robots, and Tesla, I don't think is a car company. I think this is misleading. This is a robotics company, robotics at scale company. Because I would say at scale is also like a whole separate variable. They're not building a single thing. They're building the machine that builds the thing, which is a whole separate thing. And so I think robotics at scale company is what Tesla is. And I think in terms of the transfer from cars to humanoids, it was not that much work at all. And in fact, like the early versions of Optimus, the robot, it thought it was a car, like because it had the exact same computer, it had the exact same cameras. It was really funny because we were running the car networks on the robot, but it's walking around the office and so on.
Oh,
and like it's trying to like recognize drivable space, but it's all just walking space now, I suppose. But it actually kind of like generalized a little bit, and there's some fine tuning necessary and so on. But it thought it was driving, but it's actually like moving through an environment.
Is a reasonable way to think of this as like, actually, it's a robot, many things transfer, but you're just missing, for example, actuation and action data.
Yeah, you definitely miss some components. And the other part I would say is like so much transfers, like the speed with which Optimus was started, I think to me was very impressive, because the moment Elon said we're doing this, people just showed up with all the right tools, and all the stuff just showed up so quickly, and all these CAD models and all the supply chain stuff. And I just felt like, wow, there's so much in-house expertise for building robotics at Tesla. And like, it's all the same tools, and they're just like, okay, they're being reconfigured from a car, like a Transformer, the movie. They're just being reconfigured and reshuffled, but it's like the same thing. And you need all the same components. You need to think about all the same kinds of stuff, both on the hardware side, on the scale stuff, and also on the brains. And so for the brainstorm, there's also a ton of transfer, not just of the specific networks, but also all of the approach and the labeling team and how it all coordinates and the approach that people are taking. I just think there's a ton of transfer. What do you think?
And then, of course, he said at scale. No other company can do this at scale. And that's the big difference. So what's your reaction? Anybody want to jump in on what you just saw there?
I can. Some people think that doing things at scale means you design a product, you engage manufacturing partners, preferably many of them, and you hire people. I've even looked at some of the job openings on some of these robotic websites, and I see global supply manager, GSM, common term, utilized, predominantly in the Bay Area, then spread everywhere. And I've seen a lot of some of the kind of people that are being hired. And some of this actually connects back into the founder mode discussion, which is having gone through the process of actually taking something from a concept and then bringing it into mass scale, you really understand the tribulations of what's involved and how a decision very early on, before you've even done a 2 or 3D design, even a conversation at that point, what it can actually do to the manufacturing process or the ability to scale it later on. And then once you've seen that and you've done that many times, you can now connect these concepts together. And so whether you're having a discussion 3 years prior to launch with a group of industrial design ID folks that are trying to figure out what this thing looks like, or you're having a conversation, with a different group, you can pull all those concepts together. The other thing I've seen at some companies there are certain CEOs that are really focused on product, or there's certain CEOs that are really focused on the business plan. And there's actually very few CEOs that I've seen that are focused on design for manufacturability, cost structure, unit economics, understanding, what is that translation from raw materials and the transformation into the finished product, and what is that area under the curve and what's involved? What are all the steps? How do you break things down to first principles? And there's such an absence of that. So I think what Karpathy was referring to in that video is Tesla had all of those things with the ability to operate at scale because they've done software at scale. They've done hardware development at scale. They've done hardware reliability testing for devices at scale. Everything you can plug on the end of what one of Tesla's teams have done, those teams have had to go into the factory and figure out how to get the product at scale. Or they've had to go into the data center, or they've had to go into software and figure out how this thing is going to work across 7 million vehicles and 35 different configurations inside of those vehicles. Those are all attributes of building product at scale. Now take all of that experience. You can say, well, such and such company has done it, or they build phones, or they build that. Yeah, maybe, but Tesla is actually one of the few still American companies that does all this and does their own internal manufacturing, highly vertically integrated. When you look at the rest of the auto industry today, they're more of on a 20-80 or 30-70 approach in terms of what they do internally versus what they farm out. And Tesla's literally the opposite of that. And that is a completely different way of thinking that's coming from a place of first principles thinking of like, well, if I could figure out how to do it cheaper and I'm going to have to scale the industry, why wouldn't I just keep it versus going out and trying to buy it? So I think there's a very, very large gap between the abilities that Tesla have and again, what Karpathy is referring to is like everything was already running at scale. And now we're going to build a bot. And if you look at the types of devices Tesla builds, whether it's communications, it's not Tesla, but Starlink, another Elon company, and then you look at the kind of products that Tesla builds, and you look at trying to build this thing that's kind of in the middle from a size and scale perspective, they're really perfectly set up to being able to scale this. And remember, the bot isn't something where you go out to the supply chain and buy parts and assemble bots. You are there isn't a bot supply chain. You are designing the supply chain for many of these components. And who better fit to do that than the last company that had to design a supply chain for the last major, industrial change, which was electric vehicles.
Yeah. Besides the at scale part, which is obviously the most important thing that Karpathy emphasized, wasn't it fun when he said, we just took the AI that we've been building for cars, FSD, we put it into this new form factor, this bot, and it woke up, thought it was a car. It was driving, walking around. But then eventually you need to do the other parts of it to make it look like a bot. But this whole idea that it's the same AI that they were using, they just put it in. And then it's going to wake up one day, it goes, oh, I'm a humanoid form today, and I'm going to do this task today, or I'm a car today, and I'm going to go drive. It's just so brilliant how things that Tesla had done is applicable for so many things. Yeah.
Yeah, I just did a.
Here.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Xander.
Nope. Age before beauty. Go ahead.
Thank you. I would just add that I think that we all have suffered from a collective misunderstanding of what a robot really is. Right. We've all seen, sci-fi movies and so on, and we think we know what a robot is, right? It's a pretty scary looking thing. And even the notion of a vehicle being a robot is kind of foreign to many people. But maybe the simple definition of a robot is just an autonomously operating item, whether it's a car, whether it's a humanoid, whether it's something that's just on wheels that looks nothing like a humanoid robot, a platform, if you will, that just rolls around a factory or distribution center. Jensen at NVIDIA has said that everything that moves will become autonomous. And so basically everything that moves will be a robot. And like a lot of things, Elon is in the forefront of this. He's seen this coming for many, many years, and he's positioned his company to be a major player in the space because this is where the technology is leading us. And so yes, Tesla will have more than two types of robots. They'll have more than just the car and more than just humanoid robots. I think we'll see many different robots from Tesla. I'm kind of hoping that on 1010 we get a hint at some of that.
Okay, Xander?
You said, Cern, you just said something that, like you said, technology is leading us, and I'll go back to my point in a second, but I have this question. Did Elon, because that's what it sounds like Karpathy says, is that we're doing this. So did they just, like, in his initial vision of what this company becomes, when I think about like this new book situation or comments, I just think like even he didn't foresee that, or did he? And that's the question, did they see that bots, that the car, that the car is a robot that then becomes a humanoid bot that then becomes a pet that then becomes basically that same FSD software translates across, once you solve it, once you understand what the mind can do, and now you can apply it to robotics. Did he not see that initially? That's a question. Then I'll come back with some other thoughts.
I'll jump in quickly there. I remember I interviewed James Dalma, and James, when he was being interviewed by Dave Lee, he was the one of all of us Tesla retail community members who first brought up the idea that, I think Tesla is likely going to build a bot at some point, a humanoid bot at some point. This was like way early on, right? And the reason he came up with that conclusion is because he saw robotaxi and AI and FSD having that, and he saw that this was just an embodied form. And then, so I'm sure Elon himself saw this, realizing, my gosh, we can create bots as well. I think that he did sound like at one point when he was asked the question is this still part of the mission? And he was still floundering a little bit. Well, it's not a direct connection to sustainable energy. So I think for the tunnel vision concept that Larry was talking about, he was tunnel vision. And then he realized, my God, we have a lot more than we have here. Not that he had pre-planned it 10, 12 years ago.
I think that developments in AI too have greatly accelerated this opportunity.
Right.
Right. And you could see the evolution of FSD where they were, writing the code and then suddenly decided to scrap that. And that's a pretty recent development. Right. And without that, I don't think that we would have the progression that we're seeing in humanoids either.
Yeah, the other things that I wanted to add was I just did a video with Peggy and on last Cyber Bulls, Herbert, you posted his, or it's actually Peggy. You posted a post from him. I didn't even really know about him, but this was one of the questions we talked about, how, like at some point I realized that the bot, and whether it was from the community or whoever, but this idea landed on me where FSD will translate across from the bot, from the car to the bot. And that was the moment where, because like something that we discussed with him was that he's very much about FSD. But for me, once I realized that the opportunity or the address is so huge in the robotics space that doesn't exist, right? That's something brand new. And that's where I just, I connect the dots, and it's so exciting to look at this company. And, I ask myself, do I believe Elon when he asks makes the claim of this is a new book, that we can be to think that Tesla will be worth 3 trillion. Right now it's worth 735 billion, 3 trillion or 5 trillion, but he's throwing out numbers like 30 trillion. When you start looking at these numbers, like I want to be like the bears and call BS and say that it's not possible. But when you look at it in actuality, how big is this market where the age of abundance occurs and our time is freed? And so I just I could continue wrestle with that, but I can see the path to these crazy valuations. Do you guys feel the same way in the astronomical valuation higher than Apple or Microsoft?
I would say as the bull that I've been one of the proponents of some of these crazy opportunities. And I'm just simply putting the numbers in a spreadsheet and following the result. And then that's been backed up by things that Elon and others in the humanoid bot industry have said. And I run my models again and I get even crazier numbers. The humanoid bot opportunity is like nothing that we've ever seen ever before on planet Earth. And we've talked about this many times, right? The human labor market is the single biggest market in the world. It's the largest percentage of GDP. And you create a new form of labor, suddenly it becomes the biggest industry in the world by probably an order of magnitude.
Do you guys actually know offhand how long Optimus has been around?
Well, they started development formal development, I think in February of, I know this is going to be a trick question, but I think it was February of 22, and then or 21, and then they unveiled it in September. Was that 21 or 22?
21.
22, yeah.
August 21 is when they announced it.
You mean the dancing costume person? The dancing costume person?
The dancing person. So it's been 3 years. Now you have to put yourself in Elon's shoes and say, when did he conceive of the notion? And what prompted the notion? And it's not in, it's not in the book, in Walter's famous, tome. It is one of the most interesting questions that I grapple with. I try to follow his line of thinking and what led to the bot. I'm sure his work with FSD and the thought of FSD and then going to first principles and thinking about the first principle and then tumbling to that, because I can't remember seeing any excitement about humanoid robots before that date.
Well,
I mean, I've seen Atlas dance and nobody paid attention. I mean, Atlas did all kinds of stuff and everybody, but there was no excitement. I know there were some bots that Amazon tested, but man, it's like he switched it on and then everybody saw the light.
yeah, my
Am I
guess would
missing
be
something?
it's associated with OpenAI. And he founded that in this, I just took a look here, 2015, December 2015. So call it 2016. So several years later, progress. He sees AI progressing. He sees he's using it themselves in FSD. Then he calculates forward and he realizes this is the time.
I think part of Elon's thinking too is, and we've seen this before, if he's determining that something is going to be done, then he wants to be involved in that to help guide it and lead it in a way that he wants to see, right? And this was his reason for being a co-founder in OpenAI, was he was unhappy with how Google was shepherding AI, right? He was concerned about the direction that they were going, and he wanted a competing firm. And I think maybe he felt the same thing about humanoids, because he saw that AI would become the brains of these robots. And so why not be involved in that so that you can be a major player and help steer the industry in the right direction? I would guess that that was a major factor in his decision-making here.
Okay, let's move on to the next topic, which is Tesla AI dropped a roadmap. So they said, due to popular demand, Tesla AI team releases this roadmap. And I will go deep with this line by line with Larry in another video that we're going to do. But just generically, you can see here that, first of all, there's a version here that's 3 times improved miles between necessary interventions. They've confirmed that AI3 and AI4, hardware 3, hardware 4, are unified now, that it can work on hardware 3 as well. Of course, many people have been testing, and we're watching videos of actual smart summon. This is in a parking lot. You can see this car, just cars driving themselves, and it's been amazing. Great positive feedback. There's of course some negative, but most is shockingly good. Cybertruck is going to get Auto Park and FSD in September. And finally, we're going to get one stack. Both highways and city streets will have the same end-to-end neural network. When you get these things just here in September, it's sure sounding like we're almost at feature complete for FSD. Then you've got unpark, park, and reverse in FSD. Nick Gibbs explained to me a little bit more of what he interprets that. But basically, if you're turning on FSD and it's going to drive you, you can say, hey, I want you to park when you get there, something like that. And then another version 13 going to come in October with 6 times improved miles. So they have these numbers. They know they have a little bit more precise than 5 to 10 that Elon called out. This is the AI team saying 3 times and now 6 times improved miles between necessary interventions. And then Q1 of next year, you got FSD hopefully in Europe and in China pending regulatory approval. So what was your reaction, guys, when you all saw this roadmap?
I mean, companies should, whether it's at an investor session, it's kind of, it's different than, to just put things out on X. But obviously that's wouldn't be different for Tesla to do that. The company should have a roadmap for what they're doing. They don't have to tell you everything. This is one of the things I want to quickly touch on. All tech companies put out data and metrics based on what they want to tell you. When the next iPhone is being developed, you could be using, by the way, iOS 18 in beta mode right now on your phone before it's released to the public. They're not publishing the bug curve. They're not publishing the number of stalls and they're not publishing the number of watchdog timeout. They're not publishing any of those bugs. They're asking you to use it. If you want to use it, great. If you don't want to use it, turn it off and use the public version. By the way, they're not publishing the bug curves on those. So I know there's a lot of people, Tesla should be publishing like every single release, publishing all this data. Tesla definitely has the data and they're definitely working through it. You can tell that they're working through it, and they probably have an incredible dashboard of data but they're not compelled to have to share anything with the public. They will have to share information with regulators and other governing bodies as they try to go driverless. But in terms of what they need to and have to share with the public, I think it's great that they have this roadmap. I was kind of hoping that the global expansion into Europe and into China may have been able to catch sometime in Q4, but I think it's a more realistic plan to say some point in the first half of next year. That's probably a more realistic plan, and then it'll be built probably off the back of version 13. It looks like that's coming out in October, and they'll take a couple of months, just like they've been stabilizing version 12 for several months this year. They'll probably take months to stabilize version 13. And I agree with the comments of it looks like we're getting closer to feature complete, and it looks like they want to use version 13 to wrap that up and round it out. So it's exciting, and I think the market responded well to it, because this is expansion of FSD, and it's showing that there's basically a roadmap to get this to feature complete, and I think that's exciting. I also think it's one, these things that we're seeing with Smart Summit and so forth, it's just getting us closer and closer to full autonomy. But there's a set of data that Tesla still needs to attain, and performance that they need to attain, and the data out there in terms of like Waymo or Cruise, all of it is polluted. All of it is very difficult to understand, because I've seen the graphs. I don't even know who makes them half the time. You have to look at the sourcing, but if you look at them, okay, well, is that including teleoperation? Is that including when somebody has to go in and enter? It's not clear of some of the data you're looking at. So I think there's more to come. I think there's definitely more work to do from where we are today, but it was exciting to see that roadmap. And I think, it was responded to positively.
Jeff, is that what your understanding of why we had a 4.9% move?
No, I don't. No.
I know. You're not going to try to make guesses, but the Nasdaq was up 0.25% today. The S&P was down 0.3. The market is broadening. I saw airline stocks went up, but like how? Because this is a dislocation that we're seeing, and I'm trying to explain it. If you were to venture a guess, and Cern and Larry and Herbert, if you guys can chime in on this, I'm trying to understand the market. What is the market saying by giving Tesla this credit? Is it the timepiece where you didn't have Elon and we had Scarlett Johansson? Like, is this why the market's reacting the way it is? I'm trying to understand.
I think trying to there were 40 million shares traded in the first hour. So there was serious movement in terms of the stock, but to try to tie it to one thing or another, I think it's difficult.
Maybe there were just more buyers than sellers.
Yes, definitely.
But okay.
You know what I've realized with all this is we're so focused on when we get to autonomy, but you know what's happening in the meantime? Tesla is developing and setting the benchmark for the safest vehicles in the world.
Yep.
And that benchmark that level is constantly being raised. And no other automaker on the planet has a plan, much less the ability to come even close to that. Right? And so even if we don't get autonomy for 5 years, whatever, I don't think that's right. I'm just throwing out a crazy amount of time. Tesla's going to have the safest vehicles by far, and so that will drive sales. When people see how safe it is to be in a Tesla supervised FSD, why wouldn't you want to be in that vehicle? You would be foolish to put your family in something else that is much less safer for a price that's the same as any other vehicle. Like, it doesn't make any sense, right? So that's what gets me excited in the short term, besides the autonomous future, which I'm really excited about, but I don't know when that's going to happen. It looks like it's coming at us pretty quickly, but who knows? But in the meantime, this is going to drive sales. That I don't think explains today's stock movement necessarily, but that's something that I've realized in this is that there's two things at work here. There's the long-term opportunity, which is huge and it's coming closer, but there's also this massive near-term benefit.
I agree. I think Tesla's working on a vehicle that if it's in the position, if it's in a state where it would have to be in a collision, it would perform the best in terms of reliability and safety. They've actually done that for a number of years. And then if you look at the data on full self-driving, and that has actually been exceeding human-driven cars for a period of time. And I think they're literally trying to make a car that doesn't crash. And if it's involved with some other, someone else's fault, that if you're in it, it's still the most safest thing to be inside of. There's no question about it. It's going to come down to awareness, though. I think we're talking about fractions of a percent of folks actually understand that. Volvo still has the brand in terms of safety. Other vehicles still have the brand in terms of, Tesla doesn't have it. Actually, Tesla's being stained in the marketplace in terms of EVs, EV safety, even though there's so much compelling data out there, very few people see that. So we don't know what their plan is, but at some point they have to test for awareness, and where awareness is low, they need to elevate it. That's all I would say about it.
I'm going to play this clip. Hopefully I found it, which is, this is when Elon was at the X takeover and he was asked the question about, something similar to what you just said. And remember when he said, well, I have a cat and you have a cat, but how do you don't know that my cat can actually sing and dance, and all that. So let's see if we can hear this.
Right. Well, you can think of the Tesla cars as essentially robots on four wheels. So it's really profound, and I'd recommend just giving demonstrations of the self-driving capability to people, to friends and family and stuff, because if you take a Model Y, it's a good-looking car, but it doesn't look like it has. It looks like it's a good-looking electric car, but it doesn't look like it. I use the analogy. Let's say you had a cat, and it looks like a normal cat. But actually, your cat can talk and jump up and do like a hat and cane dance and do like a musical. Are you actually like let's say you had a sentient cat that could talk and sing and dance, but people look at the cat on the couch and the cat well, it just looks like a normal cat until it jumps up and does a song and dance, and it's like whoa, like, wow, what was that? So that's the thing with the self-driving is that, yeah, sure, the Model 3 Y, they're normal looking cars, except ours can basically sing and dance, and it's intelligent and can drive from one place to another. So it's just demonstrating that to people blows their mind. So I'd recommend doing that because that's really key. And then for the Optimus robot, that's really an extension of what we've learned with the car. So the car is a robot with four wheels, intelligent robot with four wheels, and Optimus is an intelligent robot with arms and legs. So in the case of Optimus, we had to design every part of the robot from scratch, all the motors and gears and electronics and sensors all had to be designed from scratch. And also we had to learn how to operate all of these motors and sensors. You really get to learn a lot about how the human body works, and you realize there's a reason why we evolved this way.
All right, so there you go. Is that great?
Yeah, I think it's awesome. I looked at Apple right now. It's worth 3.38 trillion. Microsoft is worth 3.04 trillion. Nvidia is down to 2.63 trillion, and Tesla is at 735 billion. And so the question is, Karpathy, going back to what Karpathy said in the start of this conversation, right? He's calling Tesla an AI company. Wall Street disagrees, right? It fundamentally disagrees with that, with Karpathy, what he said. So my question is, does Karpathy still have a dog in the race that I'm unaware of? Or why is he making these statements? Because Like it just doesn't make sense. What my eyes see is different than what Wall Street sees. And what happens when Elon's on the cover of Time and is getting the credit, or Tesla, more importantly, is getting the credit for what it actually is. Like this is just alpha to me, and I just really don't understand how the market can be so far behind what we're actually seeing.
It's not behind. Tesla's, if you look at Tesla, it's valued somewhere between 50 and 75 times, depending on where it trades. And I don't know, what category do you want to put it into? But in terms of, I think you have to think through that conversation in terms of your time horizon. And that's why it's a different conversation. If you're thinking about today's stock price or next week's or so forth, everybody's got different time horizons. So if you look at NVIDIA and what they're doing with their earnings, or some of the companies you named, Apple has quadrupled the sales of Tesla. And, they've got, a huge growing services business. They have 40% gross margins. They have double the gross margins of Tesla. So I think there's a story behind each one of their companies and what their valuations are. I think the conversation around their AI capabilities that's where it becomes an interesting conversation in terms of the fact that there's 6 million plus Teslas on the road today that have autonomous AI capability with perception chips inside of them. I don't think that you don't hear that conversation a lot, but if Tesla was only valued as an auto company, it would be somewhere between 5 and 12 times earnings, and it's not. So it's clearly getting some markup. And the question is, it's a time horizon question of when are Tesla's earnings going to grow, and how far ahead of it is the market going to be in trying to time that, or trying to deal with and trying to manage that conversation. So, but if you're looking at current earnings, or if you're looking at trailing earnings, or you're looking at even forward earnings, I mean, it depends. And by the way, Tesla, in terms of what they're guiding and what's going to, they're not even splitting out that revenue yet in terms of AI and hardware. So I would say there's a number of reasons to that, but it really all comes down to your personal situation and your investment horizon, I think.
Well, Morgan Stanley valued the car company at $59 per share. So if you value the car company at $59 per share, to get from there to their 260 target, the other pieces have got to be worth quite a lot of money. And if you take those other pieces and you take them off the market and you go to venture capital, you get a lot higher valuation than you're getting from the market, I will tell you that. So if the car company was a listed company at $60 and the rest of the pieces were, independent of that, it'd be a really interesting valuation. I mean, Tesla is a very complicated company. It's a very complicated company to the outside investor and to the institutional investor. And you either understand and believe in what Elon's going to be doing with it, or you don't. And that's why there's this huge divide between the so-called Tesla Q and the Tesla Bulls, or the Tesla Bears and the Tesla Bulls. It's inexplicable by market history and market standards, but it's kind of like betting on Andrew Carnegie when he made those incredibly silly, ununderstandable buys of steel companies. Nobody could figure out what he was doing until they figured out what he was doing. So time will tell, is Elon right yet again, or is Elon making a big mistake? And he's, sometimes been wrong.
My perspective on this is this. We've got an incredible example in real time of a successful company that's ridden AI, and that's NVIDIA. If you looked at NVIDIA's valuation 5 years ago, based on its forward 12-month earnings, its PE might have been, I don't know, I'm guessing, 40 or 50. Right? And that's what analysts do. They make estimates for earnings for the next 12 months out, maybe a couple of years out. But with the benefit of hindsight now, if we go back 5 years and look what NVIDIA is trading at as a multiple of today's earnings, that stock was one of the cheapest stocks in the entire stock market. Now, the problem is that 5 years ago, you didn't know for sure that NVIDIA was going to be this successful. So therefore, there has to be a discount for that. And it's a pretty big discount because you didn't know. The future is uncertain. NVIDIA could be super well positioned and then something else happened that takes them off track. And that's happened to many companies. And so I think that that's sort of what's happening with Tesla. But I also think that people don't quite appreciate the point that I'm trying to make here is that Tesla's earnings 5 years from now could be at a step change level above where it is now, just like NVIDIA's has adjusted upwards, right? And I've shared that a robotaxi is 30 times as profitable as selling a vehicle for Tesla over a 5-year period. So 30 times, just putting the vehicle in a robotaxi fleet versus selling it, it's 30 times the profit. And I think I'm being conservative on that, by the way. A humanoid bot, if you adjust for the battery content, is 900 times as profitable as selling a vehicle, right? Because humanoid bots use less batteries, therefore you can sell more bots, and then look at the profitability of all those bots. Collectively, it's 900 times. So that's the kind of change that I think Tesla is potentially looking at in its earnings power over the next 5-10 years. And so what is a rational valuation to put on that today? And traditional finance would say, oh, no, just wait until the earnings show up, and then we'll discount the growth of that. And that's fine. That's a very conservative way to do it. But that will mean that Wall Street is constantly behind, just like they've been behind on NVIDIA. They're constantly revising their models upwards. They're not in front of the story at all. And so as individual investors, we don't have to operate the way that Wall Street does. We can look into the future. We should discount that future big time, right? You should be careful, right? It doesn't mean Tesla's a $30 trillion stock today or even a $3 trillion stock today. But if you have the luxury of a long enough time horizon, you don't have to wait for those earnings to show up before you can say, you know what, I think Tesla's worth more than what the market is giving it credit for today. That's how I feel about it. I could be wrong. Maybe these businesses won't pan out in the way that we've modeled them. I think of being conservative in some of these numbers. We'll see. The biggest uncertainty, I think, for me is time frame.
Hey, that's what I was going to say. There's a number of Tesla bulls who call themselves Tesla bulls, who are institutional firms, who say to you, and they announce it and they have notes on this. I believe in robotaxi. Tesla's going to solve robotaxi. I believe in Tesla's bot. Then when you dig closer to what they're saying not in 5 years. They're saying 10 years or 5 to 10 years. We think that the bot is going to become material to the earnings in 2, 3, 4, 5 years from now. They think it's going to be 5 years and later. Same thing with robotaxi. And that's why this timeframes, every time you see a time frame like this and they're checked off, it's coming closer. You will see those people who have predictions that it's going to be 10 years from now, or some people even 20 years from now. They then come back and go, they'll come back in 8 years. And then a year later from now, oh, actually, no, you're right. It's 5 years from now. And then a year later from now, you're right. It's next month. This is, it's our difference in our belief and our, back to Elon, do we trust what Elon says? Maybe we shouldn't, because he's often delayed, but then you should trust when you hear Karpathy talk, when you hear AI team actually put in their list here. So let me just close this out, because there's obviously Time Magazine released this most influential people in AI in 2024. Elon Musk was not in this list of 100 people. Now, it's obviously prejudiced, right? And Elon said, magazines do not establish relevance. History does. Tesla will prove it with his actions, with the capabilities of OpenAI and Tesla and Elon. And then this guy said, congratulations, Scarlett. You are on this list. Scarlett Johansson, an actor. Elon is not in the top 100 list of most influential in AI. This is a group of people here. Some of them make a lot of sense, like Sam Altman, Satya Nadella, Jensen Huang, of course. Mark Zuckerberg is here. But Masayoshi-san or these other people? Why are they in this list? So, this is the issue. People don't believe either that, or in this case, I don't think it's not they don't believe. They purposely took them out because of bias and prejudice and, of course, attacking. It's a war out there against Elon. So.
And so back
I
to
just
my
said
question.
it was two things. It was implicit bias or it's incompetence. So you have to pick one.
Well, it's not incompetence. We know that. That's my point.
But that's it. So who do we believe? Do we, believe Time Magazine or Andrej Karpathy? And that's why I asked the question. Does Andrej have some sort of dog in the race here where, we shouldn't believe that he views Tesla as a robotics company versus how the market perceives it as an auto manufacturer that, however the market perceives it. It gives it some credit. I'm not arguing that it doesn't give it any credit. My point is that you have a spin happening here from the market and mainstream media versus what my eyes see, which is why I'm so bullish on the company. And so I ask, whose opinion am I supposed to value more, if anybody's? Is it Karpathy or is it Time Magazine?
Well, Xander, you have to put a lot of credit into mainstream media. I mean, you got to believe mainstream media. It's a given that they have a job to do.
They know best.
They're an institution. We should respect that. So, I mean, one of the big questions to ask is, how much relevance has Time Magazine got these days? I mean, seriously.
It's over.
But, Time Magazine chose Elon as Person of the Year 3-4 years ago. So, I mean, times change. I mean, so a lot has to do with the politics. So.
Okay.
My point would be, who's paying Time's bills? Who advertises with them? Is there any link or issue there, right? If it's
who owns the magazine is the question, sir.
Mark Benioff.
Yeah,
that's the point. And what political party does Mark Benioff support? And I rest my case.
I think he has a different I think he has a different relationship and a respectful relationship with Elon. I don't think he was in the middle of this decision, and I really don't believe that. But that could be. I can't imagine that would be a huge credibility blow for him. I don't think he's playing editor of this.
How would he allow something like this to happen?
I think he should answer that question. I think he should answer that question. I agree with that.
I think Mark Benioff tipped the scale both cases. So there you are. That's my view.
Wonderful. So, right. We had covered quite a bit here, right? So we've talked about all the progress that Tesla has made. Elon is just, in my mind, and many of us here, that they're killing it. They're progressing quite significantly in AI, in data centers, in the bot, and FSD Robotaxi. They came out with their roadmap. Obviously, a lot of it's so delayed, and so people think that they're not delivering, but we are hitting milestones, and these are the important milestones, and we're finally coming to this, to the key times that matter the most. So thank you guys. We have a powerhouse panel here today. We got the Golden Bull, Larry. Did you want to be called the Golden Bull? Jeff is Mr. Incredible, and you got Cern the Bot Bull.
I don't want to be called that
either. And Xander, the Options Bull. Thanks, everybody. See you guys next week.
Thanks for sharing your opinions, gents.
I've created a website that is the most comprehensive resource for the Tesla investor. Please check it out. Simply go to my website at herbertong.com.